thank you very much for the opportunity to address the committee.
You will have seen sort of what we're doing. We've got your written submission. We will have read it. We've got about 15 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I presume that you have received our presentations. There were 2 of them provided.
I've just got written material. Have you got slides?
Yeah, there were 2 of them which were provided yesterday, which were supposed to be delivered.
Here we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was hoping that you would have
had a chance to look
at them because they are critical to what's going on in Christchurch. I will leave you with this material, and you may consider it later, but there are vital information there.
Yep.
I represent, and I'm a spokesperson for Empowered Christchurch, where we are social media. You know, we are where the communities have resulted to, because that has been our only ways to work together, to support each other, to live through this travesty which this recovery has been. I'm also a member of the TC3 residence group, and yeah, that's where people have supported people through this recovery. To summarize the main points in my submission, we believe that the time limit for the new act is too long. To allow the transition to local leadership to be effected as soon as possible, we would like to propose dividing the 5-year period into 3 phases. We are, to a large extent, based in the eastern suburbs of Christchurch, and we are located in South Brighton, and the South Brighton area was one of Christchurch suburbs worst affected by the earthquakes. Little has been done to help it recover, never mind regenerate the area. We have derelict homes, we have vacant sites, and many homes are still awaiting repairs or rebuilds. So the recovery phase has largely passed us. What has been missing and needs to be included in the bill is a clear commitment to genuine communication with the community and efficient coordination between the different authorities. We have been fighting for 5 years to obtain information from the different entities responsible: SERA, Christchurch City Council, EQC, and ECAN. Just to get clarification of the future of our suburb, and we've been repeatedly blocked from doing so. A lot of the information obtained has required requests under the Official Information Act. In many cases, one entity refers to the other, and the second refers you back to the first. It is vital to have community engagement from now on, and we believe that this should be a priority focus for the activities of Regenerate Christchurch. We would like to propose an 8th member of the board of Regenerate Christchurch to be added. We propose a member of the public elected by the residents' associations in Christchurch, representing the residents of the city. We would like to also like to propose an online public forum in support for this board member, with the active engagement of residents' association and community groups, bringing community matters to the board's attention and vice versa. That concludes this part of my speech, and I welcome
Thank you,
Questions?
Hugo. Now, members, are there questions? Eugenie.
Thank you. Hugo, could you, for the benefit of other members of the committee, just explain a bit of the work you've been doing around natural hazards and rising groundwater levels and some of the background information here? Because what's coming through here is that you don't think responding to some of the post-quake natural hazards is adequately being dealt with.
Yes, while the media has been focusing on future sea level rise, Christchurch, especially in the eastern suburbs, we are dealing with earthquake subsidence, earthquake damage, which has caused us to deal with what is considered, sea level problems 50 years sooner than people elsewhere in the world. We have subsided, very significantly. Many properties have subsided actually below the mean high water springs. And according to the Coastal Marine Act, land that subsides to that level is outside the boundary of the city. This hasn't been identified. This is a critical issue here. We have been alerting the communities to coastal hazards because they have been slowly coming. We are now 5 years into the recovery, and we've just recently found out that, like, my property is likely to just flush into the river, erode away. And people in our area, they are dealing with repairs and rebuilds on land that is subject to natural hazards, which are of such significance that properties are not insurable. Erosion is not an insurable risk.
So do you think that needs to be given greater focus in the bill with some more specific references to natural hazards and potentially a bigger residential red zone?
Absolutely. I totally believe that should be a major priority because a very significant number of properties are affected. And somehow EQC does not want to mention erosion and points at council and said it's council problem. But it's earthquake damage and it has to be dealt with. And we cannot be left in this situation.
David.
Yeah, thank you for your the presentation materials, and also thank you for the work that you're doing to alert people to the fact that under the Limitation Act they lose their rights to enforce a court mediated or court imposed solution 6 years after the date of their loss. Do you think that there's a risk that people have some mistaken apprehension that this Regenerate Christchurch plan is a substitute for their enforcing their legal rights against their insurers, be they EQC or a private insurer?
Could you please repeat?
Well, you're quite right that people lose their rights 6 years after they arose under the Limitation Act, and that if people have not settled their claims before that time, they're effectively at the grace and favour of the insurer rather than having a legal right that they can enforce because they have lost their legal right to sue. Do you think that there is sufficient understanding of that amongst the public? And related to that, do you think that this process is confusing people, some people, and not through any fault of any government agency, but that just in fact they are confused that their rights might arise under Regenerate Christchurch rather than their historic legal rights that expire 6 years after they started?
Yes, this is a source of major stress and uncomfort for the people of Christchurch. They don't know what to expect. They know that this is coming. We have had multiple meetings with EQC. We have tried to bring this issue on the table. We constantly, and we've brought this question to the EQC board and asked them to address it and talk to the public. We constantly get deferred. This has been taking place for the past about 6 or 8 months. We constantly get promises, we will deal with it next month, and last time was this morning, where I got a reply from EQC stating that we will address it next week. People are panicking. People are dealing with their lifetime savings. They are dealing with their future. They need some certainty, and this ambiguity of the statute of limitation adds to the agony of people which have been on hold for 5 years. This has to be dealt with. This is a human rights issue.
Well, given that there is that ambiguity, at best, you know, it might be that the answer is that those rights are lost after 6 years. That there needs to be clear advice going out to members of the community that, like it or not, to protect their rights, they've actually got to get their court action underway within 6 years of the date that caused their loss, which is, you know, the earthquake.
Yes, and I spent quite a bit of time on social media, and people are being alerted on it. And the consequences, if this is not addressed, can be quite severe. They can paralyze our court system, because the only way for people to deal with the situation is to file in court. And imagine how the court system will deal with that sort of situation.
Well, that's a secondary problem. You know, they've got to protect their rights by protecting their rights.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Have they asked? Is the minister aware of this ambiguity? Have you raised this with the minister? Because it seems to me that there should be some clear ruling being given by EQC or others that they accept or otherwise that the limitation period started on a certain date and ends on a certain date, or they should be saying clearly to the contrary.
Yes, we brought it to EQC and the EQC board. I'm not sure if that has been brought to the minister's table. Somehow there are some obstructions in the way. But, you know, we've taken it to the, had meetings with Keith Land and Brett Solvander from EQC, and we brought this issue up there.
Are you able to provide us with copies of the replies? Because I'd like to understand what EQC's position is.
Yes, absolutely.
On when the limitation period started from.
Yep.
Thank you.
Do. So if you're able to provide those to the clerk at some stage over the next few weeks, be good. Now, Hugo, thank you for that. You've got a further personal submission coming up. We've got the South Brighton Residents Association in between. And I'm just wondering if the South Brighton Residents Association might like to just tie-ho for a few more minutes and let Hugo, or is there some reason you want to be after these guys?
Well, we can actually all be here because, you know, I'm a chair of the South Brighton Residents Association as well.
How convenient. How convenient.
We've got shared problems.
That's good. That's good. So, Seamus and Dagny, welcome. Hugo, good to have you back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So we've got you, it's safe to assume we've got the association's written submission, and we're in your hands as to where you'd like to take us next.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, committee, for listening to us. I can only repeat Peter Beck's words. I totally agree with it. Our main concerns are the bill needs to address social impact, and we need more transparency, and we need basically I agree with what Hugo said earlier, and his suggestion that an open online forum would be helpful for all the citizens in the city. And I just want to introduce Seamus. He's part of the South Brighton committee, and he will take on from now on. But I really want to thank you for finally listening, and I really hope that the Regeneration bill will prove to be a move forward for Christchurch.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Seamus O'Croma, so I'm speaking on behalf of the South Brighton Residents Association. I'd like to start with a saying from Maori, which I hope you'll understand in an Irish accent, but it's He aha te mea nui o te ao, he whenua, he whenua, he whenua. And in English that means, what is the most important thing in the world? It is people, it is people, it is people. So that really sums up the crucial point that we've heard several times this morning, and which is also made in our submission, that what has been missing from the recovery is the real engagement with the communities. We represent a small community, relatively speaking, in the eastern suburbs, but we have been hardest hit, I think, of any part of Christchurch by the earthquakes. So what we would really see from the bill would be the anchoring of provisions which really guarantee that there will be genuine and open and transparent communication with communities, which is something we haven't had. The previous speaker and the speaker before that mentioned the fact that you're very often sent round in circles between the different authorities. There is no coordination between Canterbury Christchurch City Council, between ECAN, between EQC, between CERA, between central government. You go round in a circle from one to the other and no one takes overall responsibility. So we would like to see clear communication anchored in the bill. We would like to see responsibility so that you don't have to go to 3 different offices to find out who is responsible. I'd like to give examples of that for our area. And we would like to see solutions, because our submission includes a statement from the Minister stating that the area of the recovery stops at Tovey Street in Brighton, which excludes most of the Brighton Peninsula, where our residents live. This gives us a clear message that we are a no-go area where nothing is to be done in terms of regeneration. And the fact is, we're not in a regeneration period, we're right in the middle of a recovery period. We have large areas where you have waste sites, derelict houses, people who have sold as is where is, with not terribly informed people buying the houses, not realizing the risks. We had 2 tremors last night, if you were in the city. Maybe you didn't feel them in the western side of the city, but I certainly, my whole house shook on the eastern side. If we have another major earthquake, this means that lives could be lost because buildings are not being repaired or are not being demolished as they should be after a major earthquake. Usually the principle is to build back better. What we've seen in Christchurch has been exactly the opposite. We have seen cost savings on the part of insurance companies to avoid spending money. We have seen modification of guidelines, the use of MBI guidelines, instead of ensuring that buildings are up to building code. So what we would like would be solutions. What is going to happen to the area of South Brighton and South Shore beyond? Because at the moment, we get clear messages that nothing is going to happen. We are just going to be allowed to degenerate. People are going to move out of the area, which they're doing in droves at the moment, and the entire neighbourhood is becoming a rundown slum. So the east-west divide that we had at the beginning has been exacerbated by the last 5 years. We would like to see that stopped, and the only way to do that is to invest in the eastern side and to balance the equation and give people hope for the future. So one question to the previous speaker was if people were confused about the next stage of the process. I don't think people in my area are confused as much as in despair. They haven't seen very much progression in the last 5 years. They don't expect very much progression in the next 5 years. So Another reason I would agree with previous speakers on that would be to transfer authority to local people as soon as possible, not necessarily today or tomorrow, but 5 years is much too long a timeline for people to have a prospect of. Hugo mentioned dividing it into 3 different phases. There's also the option, because the actions of Regenerate Christchurch are reviewed on an annual basis, it could be considered whether further and step-by-step authorities could be transferred at the end of each year when that review has taken place. So I can go into details about the state of the suburb and the problems that our residents have, but I won't take up any more of your time, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Seamus. There are a couple, Nook and then Paul, and then Eugene.
Oh, kia ora.
Kia ora.
It's always really encouraging when we actually get an introduction to reo. So thank you. I think your version, though, is particularly around land, as opposed to men. So it's e tangata, e tangata, e tangata, but land is still very important as well.
Yes.
So kia ora to you. So just so that I'm clear, particularly with your submission, is that your members are not actually seeing any, with this new opportunity, with this new Regenerate Christchurch or Greater Christchurch bill, is that they're not seeing anything in there that could actually change what they have gone through to date.
Well, of course, most people won't have read through the bill.
Right.
I haven't read through the bill. I
Right.
don't have the time as well. I've read summaries of it, but most people, from what they read in the media, they see this is Sarah under a different name, so they don't expect any particular.
Okay, so I just think that it's probably a good idea to get that out, particularly to your members. The bill, an overview of it. There's some really good overviews of the bill itself.
Yeah.
Because this is important, particularly around the communication, as to what is, what's trying to, what they want to do, and what they will do once we heard submissions and finish the process. I think one really important thing is actually about local leadership, and that's a really major thing within the bill, particularly within the purposes, and to sort of bring more people on. I'm not sure whether you've been here all morning, but hearing about the fact of the triumphant, which is Ngāi Tahu, the council and the Crown, and then really manifesting that particularly within the sort of local communities itself. So anyway, thank you. But I think it's a good idea to actually continue to communicate what we're trying to do here with this new legislation. So kia ora.
Thank you. Paul?
Actually, Mr. Chair, I was going to, as my colleague did, point out that being Ngāti Kahuki Whangarau, I'm almost as alien to Christchurch as an Irishman on the other side of the world, but the whakatauki that we're more familiar with is he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. But I'm sure that... But
I was misinformed by another committee member.
But actually, your
But I should know
presentation was very focused on the people, and you didn't go into the detail on the land, as you mentioned at the end. So thank you for a very clear
Eugenie,
presentation.
and then Clayton.
Thank you for the submission and all the work you've been doing with the communities in the Brighton area. Why, part of the South Shore is residential red zone, but why...
South Shore is further down from South Brighton, but yeah.
Yeah, so why do you think a larger area that, as Hugo has shown, that's been affected quite significantly by the quakes wasn't included in the residential red zone, and then that would mean the bill would apply?
Well, as I've said in the submission, the impression we get is that it's going to be allowed to organically decay.
No, I get that, but why do you think the original decision when the government established the residential red zones, why do you think then that a larger area wasn't included?
I think this was because the CERA decisions were made pre-December 2011, which was when the biggest damage was done to our particular area. Just as an example, my property subsided by 1 metre in the December earthquake. This exposed it to immediate flood risk and a lot of the area around that part of the Avon. This was not considered because the zonings had already been carried out, and Sarah was adamant that no review would be made of the zonings.
So if the committee was minded to increase the area that is subject to the bill in terms of residential, would there be an easy way of finding the boundaries of that?
I'm not an expert on, geological surveys, but I would.
In terms of the area then that is subject to decay because of the land damage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think from surveys that have been carried out, Hugo could probably provide more information on this, but the boundary could be established by the area of lateral spread and by subsidence. So
or should it be the whole of
these have been measured in recent surveys over the last few months.
Or should it be the whole of the spit?
That would probably annoy and upset an awful lot of people and would be a devastating blow to the income for Christchurch City Council. So I wouldn't dare to recommend a draconian step like that. But the fact is that there are going to be huge risks from rising sea levels on top of the risks that we already have from the earthquakes. So managed retreat is the subject that is brought up now and again. So that is certainly something that I think the city and the country has to think of over the next 50 to 100 years.
Thank you.
Clayton.
Just for the record, you've said that I think you said your members or those that you represent see the ChCh regime and this piece of legislation as basically the same. Is that correct?
Yes.
And why is that? Is that because the Minister generally in both cases holds veto power?
Partially that, and partially because, back to the question of community engagement, we have had a lot of meetings with the council, we've had meetings with EQC. You don't get any meetings with ChCh. ChCh are on top of Mount Olympus, not communicating with anyone directly, but referring you to someone lower down the food chain. So it's for that reason that people find, there's no change.
Now, Hugo, you've got a submission in your own name. Do you wish to speak further to that beyond the contribution you've already made?
Yes, I've got a little bit more.
Okay, all right. Well, in that case, then I'm not sure whether you guys want to stay there while Hugo does that, but over to you. Can I thank you on behalf of the committee for your time and for your presentation? Certainly appreciate
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Hugo, back to you. Okay. So this is Hugo's submission in his own right.
Yeah, once again, I thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. To summarise my personal submission on the bill, I would like to address the community participation and local leadership, clause 90.2b. The ChCh Community Forum provided for under the ChCh legislation. The ChCh Community Forum is provided for under the ChCh legislation. It states that the minister needs to select 20 persons who are suitably qualified to participate. There is no reference to residents or their representatives. Most members are from the business community and special interest groups. Some Christchurch social communities, such as Empowered Christchurch and the TC3 residents and South Brighton Residents Association, have presented to the ChCh Community Forum. Our first presentation to the forum was in June 2013. It focused on the standard of repairs, but it was brushed off as misunderstanding. The minutes from that meeting were not published until after an OIA request was lodged. Then the minutes did exclude that particular presentation. The MBIE report in from August 2015 on the standard of repairs validates the points that were included in the original presentation. This presentation never made it into the hands of the Minister. Our second attempt to communicate with the Sarah Community Forum was our submission on the draft Regenerate bill. That's this document here, which I see you have been
We've got,
handed. That was on the 20th of August. The forum has still not posted the minutes from that presentation, and we assume that the document has not been delivered to the Minister. The communities have also established meeting with EQC, Insurance Council, Christchurch City Council, but Sarah has declined to participate in meetings as of lately. 3 meetings have been held so far, and as we are reaching the most important issues, the opportunities for discussions have ground to a halt. As of this morning, it looks like the discussions will now continue. We got a response from EQC. We know where the improvements are needed. We would like to propose that an 8th member of the Board of Regenerate Christchurch to be added. We do propose a member of the public elected by the Residents Association representing the residents of the city. We would like to also propose an online public forum for this board member with the active engagement of Residents Association and community groups, bringing the community matters to the board attention and vice versa. I will not take more of your time by going into the finer details, but we would welcome the opportunity to work with the authorities in the regeneration.
Thank you. Now, are there any questions further for Hugo? Eugenie.
Thank you. Why do you have such faith in a single representative of the Residents Association rather than the council, which is elected by, obviously?
The thing is that, everywhere we have tried to get through, we've met barriers. Doesn't matter where we go, whom we talk to. We are sort of pretty much blocked everywhere. We have spent, nearly 5 years now, 4 years, to find out information about stock banks which have been erected around us. We are blocked to communicate with council about that. It goes all the way back to Bob Parker, and then through the community board, then through the West Melton Water Committee. No one wants to have anything to do with this. And in the end, we get the information under the Official Information Act that these stock banks, which are temporary, and we are relying on, and they are not going to last because they are temporary. They were erected under, instructed by Civil Defence. This goes straight to the Minister. No one wants any responsibility for this. We've tried every possible way. Our proposal is to have at least one person that can be listened to and is answerable to the communities, because we haven't felt that we have been, the residents have had any representation here. The insurance companies have had, significant representations, funding and backing, while the residents have been left totally on their own. This is extremely cruel, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hugo. Are there any further questions, members? In that case, Hugo, can I thank you again for not just one, but being involved in 3 submissions. It's a mammoth effort. Thank you very much. And can I thank all submitters today for their contribution. I think it's been a very useful morning's work. The committee's now going to suspend until 1:45 for a lunch break, and we'll reconvene at that time to hear the submission of Trent Hiles. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.